Mr. Heck is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And Mr. Chair, thank you so much for staying back. I have a straightforward question. 5 days ago, the President of the United States said, we have a Fed that don't know what they're doing. So for the record, sir, do you?
I would say let's take a look at the economy and let that be the report card. So again, the economy is into its 11th year of expansion.
The longest in modern history.
Since we kept records, which began, I think, in the mid-19th century. Unemployment is at a 50-year low and has been for 15 months, and we expect that to continue. So, I think inflation is below where we'd like it. As you know, we're concerned about uncertainties and other factors that are weighing on the outlook and looking at changing our policy. But overall, I'd say that our economy is on a solid footing.
So, despite disagreements you and I may have had in the past about the actions I think the Fed should have taken with respect to interest rate raises, I want to state for the record, I do think that you know what you're doing. I thank you for being here. I thank you for your willingness and courage to stay independent. I thank you for your accessibility. You're only the third Fed chair that I've had the privilege to work with, but you're amazingly accessible. And I thank you especially for your remarks earlier in conversations with various members, notably Mr. Stivers and Mr. Perlmutter, regarding wage growth, and in particular, not being tempted to characterize recent wage growth as adequate, because it isn't adequate. And as you know, I've been asking since I came to this committee, when does America get a raise? And it's long overdue. But it sets up a bit of as it were, a dilemma for me. You have characterized here today that the cross currents confronting the American economy are trade and global growth. I want to know why it is, given that the Fed and you have accurately pointed to the fact that our economy is 70% consumer driven, why hasn't the Fed called out more than a generation of lack of wage growth a threat to this economy? If we want to have a healthy economy that is 70% consumer-driven, we've got to have some decent wage growth, and we haven't. We have to have a prosperous, growing middle class, and we haven't. So why doesn't the Fed explicitly call out this lack of wage growth as a threat to the growth of this economy and the health of this economy?
Well, I think we do. I mean, I think we've been trying to promote.
You were asked, and you said the cross currents are trade and global growth. The other cross current, the other downward factor is the absence of wage growth. Is it not?
I think it's really, if you look at go back to your point, go back to the turn of the century, what you saw was a decline in labor share. So, and that has not been reversed. So we're focusing on the change in wages, but really the level. They're missing, wages are missing 10 years of growth. So I think that's really the underlying problem. We're getting reasonable wage growth, but we missed all of those years beginning again at the beginning of this century. So I think it's a very serious problem, and we should do a better job of calling it out.
I look forward to you doing just that. Phillips Curve. There was a recent article in the Wall Street Journal said that in Japan, the Phillips Curve is dead. And obviously the connection, as was discussed here, alluded to here earlier, has become more tenuous even in this country. I would posit and ask for your reaction that the fact is that if you measure the Phillips curve in terms of U3, the connection's been more tenuous. But if you do, as you just now indicated, in terms of percentage of especially 25 to 64, 25 to 54-year-olds participating in the workforce, then the Phillips curve isn't dead, and that's in part why we're beginning to see some traction. Why would we continue to use U3 when it clearly isn't reflective of what has gone on, especially in the aftermath of the Great Recession, where people keep coming out of the woodwork to join this workforce, and as a consequence, that unemployment rate keeps going lower and lower, but we keep adding hundreds of thousands of people to the workforce. Is it not, have we repealed the law of supply and demand, or can we, if we continue to add people to the workforce, expect continued wage growth?
I So U3 is just a number to us. It isn't the number. We refer to it quite a bit, but obviously we look at a broad range of employment indicators. I'm not sure I took your question though on this.
Well, I think my point is that we haven't reached full employment as long as people keep coming out of the
No, that's
woodwork.
Okay, that's where I thought you. Yeah. So I mean, that's what we're learning. We're learning this. A lot of the margin where we've seen the improvement has been in labor force participation rather than unemployment, and that's great. People come in. You could actually see, and you have seen in some months, you've seen labor force participation go enough labor force participation increase that the unemployment rate actually ticks up. That's a good thing.
So I'm way over, and the chair indulged me to even allow me to ask questions today again, for which I'm grateful. Two things: we need more wage growth. Secondly, I believe you know what you're doing, sir, and I thank you for it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.